Everyone. This next video is going to be an introduction and a high-level review of how you interface with the basic layout for maps that you've created in ArcPro. If you recall from the last video, we created a new map here by inserting a new map, and through the portal for the organization I was signed into, I dragged in a live web map from ArcGIS online. So the purpose of this video is going to be it's somewhat of a high-level review. I'm going to walk through all the ribbon functions, how you play around with a map, how you move in and out, what's similar and what's different from Arc Desktop. And as I go through that, I'll pause for a moment on some of the specifics that will require more attention. Make note of them now, and there will be follow-up videos on anything that really requires a more detailed conversation. Such as symbology, for example, or selections, or analytics with a toolbar. So again, this first video is really meant to be kind of a broad overview, what it looks like, how you move around, and just get you kind of oriented to how you play with maps in ArcPro. So I've created a map here, like I said, by doing the insert. Right now there's nothing here. The contents has been populated. All we have is the base map. Those who have used desktop a lot, this alone is enough to make this a vastly superior software platform. If you've ever tried to drag in a base map to Arc Desktop and all of the challenges that causes, far easier really to zoom and link around to this. So definitely one of the benefits. But to fully be able to kind of play and engage with our map, I want to bring some data in more than what we have already. So I've got a folder I've connected to called August 23rd. It has a few pieces of data in it for Philadelphia. Notice when I'm looking in my catalog, even if the shading might appear somewhat different, it's the same general structure, right? Rasters, though they're kind of blue, they look like essentially like little gridded patterns. You have geodatabases where you can access elements of your data. They're kind of gray instead of blue here. And you have your green shape files as well that you can play with. So I'm going to drag neighborhoods in as my first layer. Similar to how things operate in desktop, right? It zooms right to the area where I am. Maybe I'll drag in farmers markets as well. They're kind of showing on top. And, there we go, right? I have the same sort of general orientation of a table of contents that I might have in desktop. I can turn things on and off, and I can play with the way that they're ordered, right? The most common way you'll have here is list by drawing order. That's just the one that really allows you to truly layer things on top of each other. But you can list by the source. They all came from the same folder, but if you have multiple folders and you want to see kind of the origination, you can do that. You can list by selection or by their editing capabilities, or whether they can snap, or their labels. Not stuff that I think we really need to get into right now. That's just sort of showing you what you have here in your contents. So the map itself, you engage with it, as you would any map. You can pan by grabbing. You can zoom in and out with your mouse. It's a much more stable zooming mechanism than you might be familiar with from desktop. And as I said before, one of the best features, in my opinion, about Pro is because it is linked to the ArcGIS online, and it's literally meant to be sort of a desktop window that lets you look online. you get the benefit of having your your base map sort of pre-cached. So you can always see where you are in the world, and as I'll show you in a second, you can even begin to change the way your base map looks. So now let's kind of move up and take a look at the various ribbons. You can see the main ones that we had previously: map, insert, analysis, view, edit imagery, and share, and a new one that has popped up. And this is going to be a consistent theme for ArcPro. From a muscle memory perspective, this is just like PowerPoint or Excel or Word. When you see a highlighted new category come up, it's because you've brought some piece of data or opened a toolbox or done something that's giving you more options, right? The mere fact that I now have feature layers, that I now have pieces of geographic data in here, is going to give me toolbar options that I wouldn't have had previously. So if we start on map, though, right now I've got myself built into Explore, and again, that's what lets me sort of move back and forth. But I have some of the same, techniques I had previously. I can kind of zoom in and I can zoom out. I can create a bookmark. If you remember from desktop, a bookmark is essentially just something that allows you to return to the same orientation, so that if you're, zooming in and out, and you want to go back to your bookmark, you can go back right to how you were looking at data previously. You also have your ability to go to an XY coordinate. Kind of cool here. If you know exact XYs you need to do, you can type them in and it'll take you to that location. The navigate toolbar here also has options. Definitely something I would encourage you to look at for anything. You can really get to your options menu through right clicks as well. And this just lets you kind of enable your panning or how quick you transition, or nothing too special. Just wanted to show you that it's there. So heading on to layers, again, one of the great features here, just the ease with which you can update your base map layer. Again, if you are a desktop user, this is going to be kind of game-changing to how much quicker and more efficient this is in ArcPro. You can add data from a number of different sources here, and this is one of those moments where a future video we will come back and we will try to dive into this a little bit more, because we can bring in data from our catalog like we did previously, but we also have the ability to type in like a URL. So if we have a piece of data that's saved online that we want to reference, we're able to bring that in as well. We're able to take a table that has XY points and essentially bring them in and plot. This is similar to the right-clicking way you would do that in desktop. That's something I think I'll review in a later video when we talk about how to kind of make and create data in ArcGIS. So yeah, a couple of good options, pretty interesting. That's one way to get it in if you don't want to drag it from your catalog over here. I'm not going to focus on preset layers yet. That'll be something for a future video. So then you get to your selections. This is, again, very similar to desktop. A selection is something that allows you to drag and highlight only a subset. Super critical tool. If you visit my videos on ArcGIS Desktop, you can really understand what you can do with selection and why it's so important. And I'm going to have videos a little bit later that sort of juxtapose these against desktop, because this is one thing where the mechanics will be identical, but the tools, selecting by location and selecting by attribute, are going to look different than they did in the past. And because of that, we're going to want to make sure that we are teaching you both ways to play around with them. So there's your selections. Inquiry, infographics is what I'm going to call a credit user. So I'll pause for a second on that. You're linked to an online account, ArcGIS Online. and you pay a certain amount annually, to remain on that site. But you'll know you also buy credits, which are the pseudo-monetary transaction element that you have for working and storing data online, or mapping and geocoding addresses, or using tools that are built to be efficient and run several processes on ArcGIS Online. And so anytime you run one of those special tools, you use credits. Well, this is one of those examples. You can actually configure and set this up. I'll do it in a video far towards the end, but that allows you to kind of mess with your data and see some quick and dirty infographics on it or on other national data. But again, it's one of those things that uses credits, so we're not going to dive too deeply into it now. Measure and locate are similar to desktop, right? It's just if you want to quickly be able to see distances of things, draw them around your screen. Oops. Excuse me, I'm going to put you up there. Labeling is controlled here. If you want to be able to label something, I do not want to measure anymore. There we go. Not going to focus on them too much yet. This will be when we talk about symbologies, but this is where you would be able to focus on your labeling. This one's grayed out. It won't be when we jump over to the next example and look at what a live web map looks like. So that's your basic orientation. Insert, we had looked at before. The only new things here are these layer templates. Not something I want to get into yet, but we'll dive into a little bit later. Analysis, as you can imagine, this will have its own series of videos over the next couple months, because this is essentially where you are running all of the tools that you learned in desktop, as well as any new tools that are added to Pro. This is the portal through which you would access your analytic functions. Everything from your ability to run and type a Python function and see it happen live, to your ability to build a model. We are not going to do this right now, but I wanted to click on Model to show you something I was mentioning earlier. Because Pro uses this tab-like structure, anything new you want to build or create, a toolbox, a database, a map, a model, gets its own tab, and when you jump back and forth between them, new ribbons come up, right? So you're consistently going to be getting accessibility to more tools than you'd had previously, just like in Microsoft. You've got your tools, your ready-to-use tools. These are ones that use service credits. These will go dark the moment that you click them, unless you are an enterprise user, so we don't need to focus on those too much. And these are the basic tools. You will have access to whatever tools your organization or you pay for. You should have the basic toolbars, but tools like Network Analyst and Spatial Analyst and Statistics you may or may not have, depending on whether you pay. We're not going to get into these now, but just to show you, when you click on them, it'll open up a window that looks similar to what you've seen in desktop, but might function a little bit differently. And we'll run through some of those in a future video. So view, this is essentially if you lose your catalogs or you lose your contents and you need to be able to, kind of find them again. This is where you would essentially, get your catalog pane back, get your catalog view, get your table of contents. We're not on tasks or reviewers yet, but I'll talk about those when we essentially get there. Edit, this is pretty cool. You'll see that we're not going to do it now, but in a future video we'll talk about how you create new features with ArcPro, and it's a little bit different than desktop because you don't necessarily have to create the editor framework like you did there, where you go to a layer and say, I'm ready to edit you now, and then the universe changes, and then you save it, and then it's done. You can just start editing kind of at any point here. Your data's live, your data's ready, it can be edited, and in many ways can be edited a lot smoother than you're able to do it otherwise. Imagery, we're going to totally wait for until we get to raster in ArcPro much later. And then share is probably one of the more important ribbons that you have up here, and it's for a couple of reasons. This is how you get the maps or the data or whatever you've made in Pro out into various forms where you're going to share. So what you see over here on the left is this idea of a package. There'll likely be a video focused on this in the near future. A package is if I just want to take my my project folder that has my model that I built and my data linkages and my maps and my linkages to my web maps, and it'll package it up in a format that I can easily share locally or over the internet with someone else on my team. Share as, this is essentially how I get it online. We're going to end this video just as an example to show how I might take this map and ultimately put it online so that I can access it from my site. And same thing here, if I want to take data that I've made on a map and put it online too. This is how you get it to the online status. Save as, just a way to kind of make a copy of the map or make a copy of the layer. And then export, would be ultimately how you take this and then export it to a PNG or a PDF or something that you can potentially manipulate further with Photoshop or another program. So that's kind of the basic orientation of how you would play with this map. So it's different though if I come over and I open my redlining map example. So I want this to be done. There we go. Opening my redlining map example, if you remember, I dragged this in earlier from Portal. This is a live web map, and I can actually open it and show you this is where it exists on ArcGIS Online. So I'm simply looking at ArcGIS Online. Now it is more complex than the other map because symbologies were already set. Pop-up windows had been created. There we go, pop-up window, so I can click on things and it'll tell me what I want to know about that piece of data. Again, always interfacing with online. I can kind of see the way the layers are structured there. And like I said previously, one thing that is a little bit different here is this download map concept. So this is online, and I'm going to show you in a moment that because it's live, if I were to, for example, and we'll have videos that talk about this, a little bit more. If I click on this thing, and I see it's got a NHGIS city of 101, and I'm going to take my selection tool, and I'll just select it right here, and then I'm going to open the attribute table, and I'm going to come right in the line here, and I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to call it 1003. And then I'll hit enter and get rid of that. It's updating it. And effectively what I've done there is then if I come to this and I refresh it, and I click on that same layer, it'll now say 103, right? So it is a live map. I am taking elements on my portal here and I am making them live. Now there are obviously exceptions to that. One of the neat things is I can take my online content, and if I wanted to, I could then drag in, not that I would necessarily need to, but I could drag in hydrology, right? Rivers in and around Philadelphia, and there they are, and I'm looking at them here, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you would see them automatically here, right? Because that's a local layer. I would actually need to publish that layer as a hosted feature layer online for it to be shown here. So that's kind of the neat thing I wanted to show you about your online maps. We're going to dive into some of these concepts in greater detail in previous videos, but you can edit content and have it post immediately back online, and you can look at local layers, right, things on your computer, and web-based layers together but that doesn't mean that they will automatically update and save themselves. The download map that I had mentioned previously, if I don't want changes that I'm making to post themselves, I could take this offline, save it on my computer, work on it, and then I could re-upload it later. So we'll end this video, pivot into the next one, into the actual feature layer, right? Playing with the data that comes in. But I want to end this by, showing you that share, and giving it a name like example map. No spaces. This is an example, and it's an example. And I want to copy all of my data, and I just want it to go right to my root folder on there. Right now, I'll say nobody can look at it except me, and I would go to share. And, it says I have an error. Service layer has different projection than the map's projection, so that would just mean that one of my layers is misprojected, and I think it's probably the OpenStreetMap. So I could just take that away. Now I'll try. Okay, map does not contain a base map. It's going to just keep getting angrier at me here. So I might just have to kind of play around and fix that so we don't waste the video, but we'll open up the next video returning to that. The concept again to show how you would post data that is on the computer's web here onto the internet so that you can play with it moving forward.